Welcome to another episode of Bite Size. This here's where I take a short look at a short game. I don't have much time, so let's get going. Dogurai is a simple game. It's an indie retro action platformer heavily inspired by the Game Boy that I stumbled across by chance, picking it up for less than $1 during an eShop sale a while back. It wears those Game Boy influences boldly. Each level has a 4-color palette, it can be played with a 2-button setup, and even with its fair amount of difficulty, it can be beaten in a single sitting. It probably won't knock your socks off, but like its titular protagonist, it's an honorable little underdog that I'm pleased to have in my collection. Dogurai released on PC in 2019, then came to the Switch and PS4 the following year, and I think it also released on Xbox very recently too. Developed by Hungry Bear, the credit screen reveals the game was created by 3 guys, one on programming, one on art and design, and the third composed the music. So even with its short length and rather blocky level design, the game still stands as an impressive feat from a passionate team. And it's no buggy mess as one might expect either. Throughout a handful of playthroughs I experienced 0 glitches, quite notable considering its action-focused gameplay. The story is pretty light here. The game takes place in a dystopian future. The world's armies and police forces have all been replaced by robots, and their creator realized that might make it easy to take over the world. Bones, our retired Special Forces dog samurai, embarks on a mission to vanquish the robotic forces. The game is very Mega Man-esque in its setup, featuring an opening stage, 4 robot leaders whose stages you can tackle in any order, and then 3 final stages, the penultimate containing boss rematches, and in the last you fight the final boss. And once defeated, Bones escapes the space station and the day is saved, I suppose. I don't know, we're not given much here. Heck, all but one of the bosses remain nameless throughout, and there's very little dialogue, so it's left to your imagination to fill in the gaps, which I'm sure was done on purpose because the games by which Dogurai was inspired had a fill-in-the-details-yourself philosophy, largely due to system constraints. Bones can be controlled with 2 buttons and a D-pad. 1 button swings a sword, both in the air and on the ground, and grounded slashes can be chained into a 3-hit combo. Your range requires you to get close to enemies to deal damage, from which much of the difficulty stems. Additionally, slashing through these round bullets will deflect them, rendering them harmless. The other button jumps, double jumps, and slides while holding down, though thankfully modern controllers have the slide mapped to an extra button for a single input. This makes the slide infinitely useful for getting around as it's faster than walking, can get you through tight spaces, and I noticed in the trailer that sliding into enemies can even stun them, but I never missed this trick. Finally, one type of enemy and most bosses have a recovery state where they show an exclamation point, and if you stand near them and press slash, you'll enter a QuickTime event requiring 5 directional inputs to deal extra damage to your foes. The timing on these inputs is pretty generous, meaning the most difficult thing about this move is recognizing when you need to be close enough to initiate it. The opening level has Bones advancing through a battle-torn city. As you get a handle on the controls, you'll find 2 kinds of pickups. Pluses restore a small amount of health, and hearts fully restore health and give an extra life in hard mode where you have limited lives. Additionally, the game has a couple invisible checkpoints in each stage, including right before the boss. You soon enter the sewers and reach this stage's boss. That's another thing left to your imagination. What are these bosses? The trailer provides a more detailed look at some of them, but it really isn't much. I always imagined this first boss as a little shuriken beetle bot. Dying to him once or twice is probably okay as you get a feel for what the boss encounters expect of you. After this, the 4 robot leaders' stages open up. I started with the hardest stage and went counterclockwise. The Cryolab stage is the most difficult of the bunch due to platforming with ice physics and annoying stage hazards, including giant fans, falling icicles, and geysers of super chilled air that freeze you and hurt you, frequently knocking you back into bottomless pits. The ice physics are the worst since they massively increase your momentum after just a few steps, becoming uncontrollable at times. This stage can be completed, but the constant freezing and falling into pits can be aggravating. This ends with a fight against a Wolfman-like boss. The bosses in this game generally provide a steep challenge as they attempt to end your mission, and this one's no exception. He has a lot of slashing attacks, but he does leave himself open to damage quite a lot, and once you recognize his attacks, his threat level drops way down. The rest of the robot leader's stages are more straightforward. The desert base contains many enemy types, but the real shakeup is a motorcycle section for the second half of the stage. You can only jump, and missing any will kill you, sending you right back to where you got the motorcycle to try again. And there's a collectible on the difficult path, making for another maddening segment that took me many tries to get right. Luckily, this culminates in a fight with a mecha, which is probably the easiest boss in the game. The Volcano Cave stage isn't too bad. The big set piece here is a giant lava wave that causes insta-death if you get caught. It's a fun little challenge that shouldn't be too taxing if you're constantly sliding like you should be. The boss here is a phoenix, which is challenging due to it hanging in the air. You have to jump up to slash it, leading me to take extra damage by accidentally jumping into the boss. The water plant's greatest hurdles are the moving platforms on a moving background, making it difficult to judge when they'll change direction, and a conveyor belt machine press combo near the end, culminating in a fight with magician? Once you know what he's going to do based on where he teleports, he's not too hard. You just need to remember to slide away when he shoots the radial pellets so you have a chance to dodge them. With the robot leaders defeated, you begin the final 3 stages by returning to the city. After passing through the same war-torn streets and buildings, and defeating a giant mech mid-boss, you'll enter the woods for the absolute worst part of the game. Eye turrets are plastered throughout, constantly taking potshots at you, and they can only be destroyed when their eyes are open, assuming you can get close enough to hit them in the first place. Add to that tiny versions of the moving platforms from the water plant, and you have an exercise in extreme frustration. If you're able to jump to the next moving platform, and that's a big if, it's very likely that an eye turret will shoot you off and you have to try it all over again. It is absolutely infuriating. When you are able to muster that lucky run, the forest area leads into a lab where you disable a barrier, leading to a battle against a samurai. The fight is pretty easy as long as you're at full health and bring the fight to him. The following stage takes place in the enemy's base, featuring a bunch of lasers that will look familiar to Mega Man fans. These are much more reasonable though, only firing once you've crossed their path and dealing damage instead of instantly killing you. There are also some rocket platforms you have to ride to advance. You soon come across another barrier and you'll rematch the robot leaders to bring it down. Proceeding through the barrier and to the end of the level leads to a giant rocket, in which you'll fight the blob boss. He has a few attacks that disperse his goo and expose his core so that you can damage it. It's easy to take damage here, so be careful. The rocket brings you to the final stage, the space station, which is different depending on if you found all 4 discs in the robot leader's stages. If not, you come across your companion Ryder in a tube and can't save him, so you have a difficult fight with his roboticized form. You then continue on and fight a Reaper as the final boss. Bones seemingly escapes and wonders if that could have gone differently. If you found all 4 discs, you release Ryder from his captivity and promise to return for him. You fight the Reaper boss again, followed by the real final boss, the main computer. Your health is fully restored before the fight, which sees you QTE both generators, then slash the tank in the middle, and then commit the final strike to end it for good. It sets a 3-minute timer on the self-destruct, so Bones returns to Ryder and carries him to the hangar where the samurai from before appears and rescues them. They watch the station explode as they rest. For the treble 100%ing the game, you unlock Ryder as a bonus playable character! As it turns out, Ryder is a little underwhelming as a BPC. He's more of an easy mode, controlling largely the same as Bones, but his slash also throws a shuriken in one of 3 directions. Projectiles really make for an easy game. Enemies hardly stand a chance, and bosses aren't much different either. A Ryder playthrough doesn't take nearly as long as a Bones playthrough. The annoying sections still suck though. You can even collect the discs, and a 100% run sees Ryder saving Bones. The only new content comes if you miss 1 or more discs. You fight a roboticized Bones, and his attacks are different than Ryder's, although you're sure it can still make short work of this new boss. If you're a big fan of the Game Boy era, or just like retro-styled action games packing some challenge, I'd suggest giving Dogurai a shot. It won't run you more than $5, and you'll be supporting a very small dev team. It's a solidly put together game with a few rough patches in the level design, and I think it does enough in its short playtime to keep the player entertained. Let me know what you think of Dogurai, or give me a recommendation for another bite-sized game. Thanks again for checking this out, and I hope to catch you in the next one.